Welcome to Growing Younger podcast, where we guide you through your journey of reaching your fitness goals after 40. Walking versus cycling for knee arthritis. This is today's topic of this episode of the podcast. Hi guys, my name is Alex Blaszewski. I'm a physiotherapist from Growing Younger Fitness, and this is going to be today's topic. Is we're going to compare and explore the value of cycling versus walking, specifically for people with knee arthritis. We're going to look into some evidence, some research, and also we will try and sort of break down and hopefully clarify some of the myth that exists on this topic. Now, before we delve into this topic, I just wanted to quickly mention that we are proud to announce that we are officially number 2 podcast in New Zealand. So number 2 fitness podcast in New Zealand, according to a rating presented by feedspot.com. So they have a rating of the top 5 fitness podcasts as in New Zealand. So if you're interested, go and check it out. So it's feedspot.com. So yeah, we are pretty happy. We've been working hard over the last couple of years building up this podcast, and thank you for following and thank you for supporting our channel just by listening. By the way, if you'd like to share this podcast with people who you think might benefit from it, so anyone over 40 who wants to stay healthy and fit as you sort of get older, this podcast is right for you. Okay, so let's go into this topic. So let's just break down the potential hazards of each of these forms of exercise. So walking versus cycling. So first of all, I wanted to say that both walking and cycling, in fact, pretty much any form of aerobic or cardio exercise, helps to reduce pain by 20 to 30% on average. Now, this is based on a large, very high quality review studies. So this is definitely there's some hard evidence to back up the statement. So both walking and cycling, generally speaking, I guess if you look at it long term, is quite beneficial for arthritic knee pain. Now, there are very few studies that kind of directly compare walking to cycling. However, in terms of the risk of flare-ups, walking seems to carry a little bit more risk. So short term, walking, because it involves quite a bit more impact on the knee joint, you will find that people are more likely to flare up. Now, I am not saying by any means that you should avoid walking when you have knee arthritis. What I would like to say though is that if your arthritis is sort of categorized, let's say, moderate to severe, you should just be careful when you walk. So particularly if you're walking long distance, it's a bit of a trial and error. So if you went for a walk, before, and you found that after about half an hour your knee started to flare, then maybe next time you go for a walk, maybe you should stop at about 25 minutes, just to kind of avoid that stage where you're likely to flare up. Now, cycling, on the other hand, is very low impact. In fact, it's pretty much, it's considered to be a non-weight bearing exercise, okay, because there's very little stress on the knee joint, particularly on the cartilage, when you're cycling. So in terms of the risk of flaring up your knee joint, cycling is safer, okay. Now, cycling is also, it presents a significant benefit of strengthening your quadricep muscle, okay. So unfortunately, walking doesn't really do it as much, but cycling is proven to help strengthen your quadricep muscle, and to a certain degree also your glute muscle as well. Now, why is it important? So there have been a lot of studies that show that if your quadricep is stronger, it actually correlates with reduced pain in your knee, as well as it helps to slow down the progression of your osteoarthritis. And like I said before, there's a lot of evidence to back up the statement. So walking can have a little bit of a strengthening effect, but it's nowhere near as significant as cycling, unless you include some hill walking or sort of more like high speed interval training. But again, these things are more likely to flare up your knee discomfort. Look, guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Look, I have a little favor to ask you. If you know someone who this podcast could be useful for, I would really appreciate if you share this podcast with them. It would help them, but also it would help me grow the channel as well. Now, another part that I wanted to mention in this podcast is what sort of impact these two exercise modes have on the health of the actual cartilage inside your knee joint. So studies have shown that regular walking at a tolerable pace, so the pace, the speed that you can tolerate quite comfortably, that doesn't cause any flare-ups, it does not aggravate and does not worsen the loss of cartilage. So there's a bit of a urban myth that if you do a lot of walking, and especially running, but particularly walking, that somehow it damages your joint further. Well, according to research, that is actually not the case, as long as you're walking at your comfortable pace. So much so that in fact moderate walking has actually been associated with better cartilage health and quality, according to some MRI studies. So some MRI scans show that people who walk more actually have better cartilage than the people who do not walk as much. Now, it is fair to mention that cycling also helps to support cartilage health through the thing about cycling, that movement, it just seems to be so beneficial for the knee joint, because it's sort of like that sort of high repetition, very low load, it's almost like a soothing movement that helps to protect and maintain your cartilage. Okay, so, and one more kind of little subsection that I wanted to talk about is in terms of like your pain and your symptoms response to either walking or cycling. So many arthritic patients report fewer flare-ups with cycling than with longer distance walking, and that kind of, I've already sort of mentioned this in the beginning of this episode. So if you're purely looking at a short-term risk of ending up in more pain by over-exercising, so there's a higher chance of that happening if you do a lot of walking versus if you do a lot of cycling. Okay, so if you know that your knee is quite sensitive and it doesn't take a lot of physical activity to upset the pain, then I think maybe you should be considering doing cycling more often than walking. But again, you can't completely avoid walking, and you shouldn't, because let's say if you only cycle and you do no walking, then your ability to walk will gradually deteriorate. So then just think about what impact that will have on your independence, on your functional life, because we need to walk to get to places and just being able to function. So you shouldn't be completely getting rid of walking from your fitness routine. Okay, but do it at your comfortable rate, at your comfortable pace. Now, specifically for people with what we call patellofemoral arthritis, or the arthritis that specifically affects the underlying surface of the kneecap. So these people are more likely to flare up from excessive walking particularly if you are going up and down stairs a lot. So specifically, if you know that you have arthritis affecting your kneecap joint, then maybe you should be considering substituting cycling for walking more often. Okay, again, you should not be avoiding walking completely, but perhaps if you are doing a lot of walking right now, maybe you should be doing a little bit more cycling, a little bit less walking. Okay, now as a bit of a summary, I do want to conclude that I don't think either walking or cycling is the best option. I think you should look at your circumstances, and in most cases, you should include both cycling and walking as a means of maintaining your fitness and maintaining your functional capacity. But in certain circumstances, particularly if your knee is quite sensitive, or if your arthritis primarily affects your kneecap joint or patellofemoral joint, then possibly you may need to focus more on cycling and a little bit less on walking. But either way, walking should still be included as long as it's tolerable and it's not causing any sort of major flare up of pain. Okay, so for that, the easiest way for that to happen is just keep an eye on your pain levels, and if you know that roughly at say 30-minute mark or 20-minute mark after starting to walk, if you know that usually you start to get pain at that level, then you should stop walking just before. Okay, so maybe keep your walking intervals, let's say 15 minutes or 20 minutes, so that ideally you should not be getting any pain while you walk. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So there's no universal rule of thumb, but overall I think both walking and cycling are important, but cycling may be a little bit more gentle on your knee joint, especially if you have a bit of arthritis. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All the best, guys, and I'll speak to you in the next podcast.